Alien girl hides from storm in human's arms, refuses to let go. The wreck of the Stardust Drifter groaned around Kale, metal screaming like a dying beast under the onslaught of the magnetic hurricane. Rain, thick as sludge and charged with crackling energy, hammered the fractured hull. He was jammed into the navigation console. The back half of the ship sheared clean off. Sparks danced across fried circuits. His head throbbed where it had met something unyielding during the crash landing. That wasn't quite a crash landing as much as an uncontrolled tumble into this god-forsaken storm-racked hellhole. He'd been trying to outrun Cathar bounty hunters, figured a detour through the uncharted belt around the Raxus system's third moon was a safe bet. Figured wrong. The belt wasn't uncharted, just guarded by the storm. By whatever the storm was hiding, he scrambled deeper into the relative shelter of the forward section, the wind howling through the rents in the plating, carrying the scent of ozone and something, Garrulea, something sharp and metallic. A figure emerged from the blinding sheet of electric rain clinging to the torn doorway, tall, armored in what looked like living rock and shimmering metal scales. Not armor, maybe skin. The figure was female, definitely female judging by the lean lines, the subtle curve of a hip, the predatory grace. Her eyes, or where eyes should be in that hard, angular face, glowed with an unsettling internal light. She moved with the storm, part of it, impossibly fast, despite the gale tearing at her. Kale swore, scrambling for the only weapon he had left, a battered plasma pistol he hadn't charged in a week. "Hey, hold it! I'm just passing through. Nothing to steal here." She stopped a few feet away, the storm swirling around her but not seeming to touch her. Her head tilted, a motion that was both curious and utterly alien. A sound rumbled deep in her chest, not quite a language he knew, but it carried the weight of command, of undeniable authority. Her hand, three-fingered and tipped with obsidian claws, reached out, slow and deliberate, towards him. Shelter, the sound was close to it. Rough, resonant. The storm hunts. Shelter here. Her gaze fixed on him, unnervingly direct. It wasn't just looking. It felt like probing, stripping away layers he'd built up over years of running and hiding. He saw himself reflected in the faint glow of her gaze. Dirty, scared, and utterly outmatched. "Yeah, shelter. That's what I'm doing. You, to need some too?" Sarcasm, the only shield he ever had. It barely registered. She took another step, closer, radiating an intense heat that had nothing to do with the storm outside. He gripped the pistol tighter. This wasn't just an alien. This was something else, something powerful, ancient, and radiating a loneliness that somehow cut through the fear. He felt a pull, like iron filings to a magnet, not just to her, but to the storm itself, to the raw energy swirling around them. His head swam. He lowered the pistol slightly, drawn in spite of himself. Her eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying. "Human, you burn with resonance, dangerous, and required." Required? Required? For what? His mind scrambled, trying to process the words. The feeling, the sheer wrongness of this entire situation. He was a simple smuggler, a survivor, not some mystical component. Required? "Look, lady, I just crashed my ship. All I require is a bandage and maybe a drink that isn't recycled coolant." He tried to sound casual, but his voice cracked. The alien woman didn't respond directly to his words. Her focus, absolute. She took another step, entering the battered hull fully. The storm's fury seemed to lessen fractionally inside, as if her presence somehow anchored the chaos. But the air grew thick with the energy she radiated, a scent like burning copper and something like blooming nightshade. He felt a different kind of storm building inside the cramped space, centered on her. She extended her hand again, palm up, towards him. This time, it wasn't a threat, it was an invitation, or maybe a demand disguised as one. "The storm seeks life. We will give it." "Nothing." Her voice was low, a gravelly purr that vibrated in his bones. "You have resonance, a focus. I Vidium shield. She didn't wait for his consent. She stepped into the narrow gap beside the shattered console where he was hunched. It was a ridiculously tight fit, pressing her hard, scaled body against his soft, fleshy one. A jolt went through him. Not unpleasant, just intense. Like touching a live wire wrapped in velvet, her internal globe pulsed, synchronizing inexplicably with the erratic flicker of the emergency lights. "This is a little close, isn't it?" he choked out, trying to shift away. There was nowhere to go. For this shelter. She didn't answer with words. She simply pressed closer, her hard head level with his shoulder. He felt the subtle vibration from her throat nodes, a low hum that resonated deep in his chest. It was like being held captive by a living, breathing force of nature. Her arm, surprisingly warm despite the metallic scales, wrapped around his waist, anchoring him against the violent shudders of the hull. He could feel the distinct texture of her, the plates and joints, the unexpected softness beneath the scales on her underside. He was acutely aware of his vulnerability, his soft skin against her natural armor. The sarcasm faltered, replaced by sheer sensory overload. He could smell her now, more complex than before, the metallic tang, the nightshade, and something else, something deep and musk-like, that stirred something primal and confusing. She shifted slightly, tucking her head against his chest. It wasn't submissive, it felt possessive. He could feel the sharp points of her scales pressing through his worn flight suit. "Human, you tremble. Fear is a wasted energy." Her voice was muffled against him, the hum of her throat nodes amplifying. "Channel it, into the shield." He didn't know what the hell she was talking about, channeling energy or shielding anything, but her presence, solid and unwavering, was a strange comfort against the terrifying fury outside. He wrapped his own arms around her, awkwardly, his hands resting on her hard, alien back. Her scales felt rough, yet surprisingly sensitive under his touch. It was a ridiculous tableau, a wrecked smuggler and a glowing alien warrior huddled together against a sentient storm, crammed into the dying guts of a spaceship, and she wasn't letting go. Not even a little bit. The implied threat of her presence lingered, a silent promise of what would happen if he tried to pull away. This wasn't just seeking shelter. This was something else entirely. The storm howled, but inside their cramped space, a strange calm settled. Kale could feel the alien woman's steady breathing against his chest, the rhythm different from a human's, a little slower, deeper. The vibrating hum from her throat nodes had settled into a constant thrum, less a sound and more a physical sensation, vibrating through his ribcage, calming his frantic heartbeat. He could feel the distinct ridges of something beneath the scales on her back, almost like markings etched into the bone. He remembered her saying she was exiled. Were those bond marks? Exile marks? He wanted to ask, but talking felt impossible in the face of this enforced intimacy. Her grip around his waist tightened fractionally, pulling him even closer. If that were possible. His face was pressed against the side of her hard head, his breath warm against her scales. "You have questions," she stated. "Not a question. They can wait." The storm listens. He felt a prickle of unease. Listens. The storm was intelligent? Or was that just some alien metaphor he wasn't grasping? He tried to shift again just to ease a cramp in his leg. Her body stiffened instantly. The faint glow in her eyes flared, and her grip became steel. "Stay." "The link is forming. Do not break it." "Link? What link?" His mind flashed back to her words, resonance, focus, shield, required. Was she using him for something? A power source? A distraction? What link? He managed to rasp out, his voice tight. "What the hell is going on?" Her head lifted slightly from his chest, though she didn't loosen her hold. Her eyes met his directly in the dim light of the wrecked ship. The glow intensified, and for a moment, he felt a strange pressure behind his own eyes, a rush of alien thoughts and sensations too fast to grasp. Anger, cold and sharp, a sense of betrayal, loneliness vast and deep as space, and then possessiveness, hot and sudden, focused entirely on him. Silence. she commanded, her voice still low but edged with a dangerous intensity. The resonance, it binds us against the chaos. My shield is weakened by the storm's magnetics. Your dual presence amplifies it, stabilizes it. She paused, studying his face. This world is so. It reacts to intense life force, especially unpaired life force. It draws attention. Attention from what? The storm? The predators he'd seen scuttling in the periphery before the main blast hit? Great, he muttered. So I'm a human antenna attracting cosmic trouble. Just my luck. His sarcasm seemed to confuse her, or maybe irritate her. A low growl rumbled in her chest. Luck is irrelevant, only survival. And the strength of the bond. She shifted, pulling him flush against her body. His hand brushed against the side of her neck, beneath the scales. He felt a faint vibration, a pulse that wasn't quite a heartbeat. Her skin there was incredibly smooth, warmer than the rest of her. He traced the line of what he now recognized as a deeply etched scar running from just under her jaw down her throat, disappearing under her scaled collarbone. It glowed faintly, mirroring the light in her eyes. Her bond-mark scar. That scar, he whispered, daring to touch it gently with the tip of his finger. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened slightly, the glow flickering. For a moment, the hard, dominant facade cracked, revealing something raw and vulnerable. She didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch. An exile mark, she confirmed, her voice softer, almost hesitant. For a broken vow, a failed claiming. Vow? Claiming? More alien rituals he didn't understand, but the vulnerability was real. It disarmed him more than her strength ever could. I'm Kale, he offered, his voice gentle. Thanks for not letting the storm eat me. She didn't offer a name, just watched him, her eyes tracking his every movement. The silence stretched, filled only by the roar of the storm and the steady hum of her body against his. The scent of nightshade and musk grew stronger, intoxicating. He felt a pull unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Not just physical attraction, but something deeper, woven into the fabric of their immediate reality, tied to the storm, to the scarred alien woman pressed against him. This wasn't just forced proximity, it was becoming something else, something dangerous. The air in the wrecked ship grew heavier, charged not just with the storm's energy, but with the potent, confusing intensity of their forced proximity. Kale could feel the thrumming resonance between them deepening, a strange echo in his own chest that matched the vibration in her throat. It wasn't just vibration anymore. It felt like a shared frequency, a silent communication humming beneath the surface. He could almost feel her thoughts, fragmented images of towering, crystalline structures, sharp, precise movements, and a crushing sense of loss. She pulled back slightly, just enough to look at him properly. Her eyes, glowing brighter now, held a mixture of calculating assessment and bewildered curiosity. Kale, she repeated, testing the sound of his name. It sounded rough and foreign on her tongue. A designation. Does it carry weight in your tribe? Tribe? It's just my name, he said, offering a weak grin. Means? I don't know. Stubborn, maybe. Doesn't carry much weight anywhere these days. She tilted her head again. That unnervingly alien gesture. Stubbornness can be a useful trait, especially in the storm's eye. The storm had an eye? He shivered, despite the warmth radiating from her. Look, about this link and resonance, he ventured, is this some kind of alien mating thing? Because if so, nobody sent me the memo, and I'm pretty sure consent is a factor for my species. Her head snapped back. Her eyes narrowed, the glow hardening. A low growl rumbled in her chest again, deeper this time, vibrating through him. Mating? She scoffed, the sound harsh and dismissive. This is not a coupling ritual, human. This is survival. This resonance allows my shield to anchor against the storm's nullification field. Your presence amplifies me, keeps us from being torn apart or consumed. Consumed? By the storm, or something in it. He didn't like the sound of that. Right. Survival. Just pressing our bodies together against a metal wall for survival. Makes perfect sense. The sarcasm dripped. She didn't seem to pick up on the tone, or maybe she just ignored it. Precise proximity is necessary for optimal amplification, she stated matter-of-factly, and then added, after a beat, in a lower, more intense tone, your skin is soft, and your scent distracting. Distracting. That wasn't exactly the clinical survival explanation he expected. He felt a flush creep up his neck. Thank yours is scaled and smells like burning copper. A low, rumbling sound escaped her throat. Was that amusement? It was impossible to tell. Copper is resilient, strong. She leaned in again, closer this time, her face inches from his. He could see the intricate patterns of her scales, the subtle shifts in color, the faint bioluminescence tracing lines across her cheeks. Her eyes, when that close, were mesmerizing. Pools of internal fire. Your heartbeat is fast, Kale. Resonance amplifies emotion. Fear draws the storm's hunters. Hunters! That confirmed his fear. Something wasn't just being deflected by her shield. It was actively trying to get them. Okay? Okay? Less fear, more the intense focus on staying alive, he said quickly, trying to control his racing pulse. He concentrated on her, on the strange, comforting weight of her against him, on the vibrating hum that seemed to soothe his nerves even as it intensified the weird link between them. He focused on the texture of her scales under his hands, the warmth radiating from her body. It felt like building a wall with his mind. Using her as the foundation, the storm outside seemed to ebb slightly again, the sound receding from a roar to a violent shriek. Her glowing eyes widened. Yes, she breathed, the single word carrying immense satisfaction. Focus your heat into the link. Emplia Faye, her hand, which had been gripping his waist, slid higher across his ribs, then rested flat on his chest, directly over his heart. He could feel the hard tips of her fingers pressing into him, demanding a connection. Do it, Kale, or we die. The simple, brutal ultimatum jolted him. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Absolute and terrifying. He focused, pouring his adrenaline, his fear, his sheer desperate will to survive into the strange resonance binding them together. He felt the link surge, a feedback loop of energy between them, amplified by his own frantic pulse. Her body stiffened, her glow pulsed brighter, and for a moment, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not just power, but a desperate need. The storm outside recoiled, a visible shimmer in the electric rain, but the intensity inside their cramped space tripled, focused entirely on the alien woman and the human she held captive against the wall. The hunter outside might be momentarily deterred, but the hunter inside the shipwreck was only just beginning her pursuit. The surge of amplified resonance subsided, leaving Kale breathless and trembling. He could feel his own energy signature thrumming in the air, amplified by her. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The alien woman, Vorlog. He realized he needed to call her something. Let out a low, guttural sigh, a sound of satisfaction that vibrated through him. Her hand remained on his chest, her fingers splayed, feeling the frantic beat of his heart. Good, she murmured, her voice softer than before, laced with a strange exhaustion. You have talent for resonance focus. Few of my species possess it naturally. Fewer still can link across. Types? Humans and whatever she was? Was this kind of cross-species bonding rare or forbidden? Her words implied the latter, especially with that exile mark. So, I'm useful, he said, the sarcasm returning, a shield against the bewildering intimacy. Glad to know my life has cosmic purpose beyond avoiding debt collectors. Vorlog pulled her hand back slowly, lingering on his skin for a moment before she did. The absence of her touch left a strange emptiness, a cool spot on his chest. Usefulness is a form of purpose. Especially here. She finally stepped back, creating a foot or two of space between them in the tiny shelter. The relief was immense, but short-lived. The storm still raged outside, and the silence between them was thick with unspoken tensions. He noticed now, in the dim, flickering light, the faint, intricate lines tracing across her scaled skin. They weren't just scales, they were patterned, some swirling, some geometric, and they were faintly luminescent, pulsing in sync with the residual resonance still humming between them. The exile mark on her throat pulsed the strongest, a deep, angry crimson compared to the soft blue-white of the others. Those patterns, he said, pointing. They glow. Bonding patterns, she confirmed, touching her own arm, tracing a swirling design. They respond to resonance, to strength of link. The mark, she indicated her throat, responds to severance, to pain, and to potent forbidden contact. Forbidden contact. With a human, his mind raced. Was this the broken vow she mentioned? Linking with an alien? Is linking with a human? And forbidden? He asked, already pretty sure he knew the answer. She hesitated, her eyes flicking away for the first time towards the torn metal of the hull. For an exiled enforcer, she said carefully, using the term for herself, such a link is a profound violation of the vow of purity, of the ritual of isolation. Enforcer. Isolation. Violation. This was getting more complicated. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was a violation, a forbidden contact, an amplification tool for an exiled alien warrior. So, you're in trouble because you linked with me. We are in trouble, she corrected, turning her glowing eyes back to him. The storm is not merely weather. It is a threshold, patrolled by guardians of the purity vow. They seek those who carry forbidden resonance, those whose patterns glow. Hammered erratically, her gaze dropped to his chest, where he could almost feel his skin vibrating. His patterns, apparently, were glowing erratically. Shit. So, bonding with me makes us a target? Great. Just fantastic. He ran a hand through his damp hair. This day kept getting better and better. You could have left me out there, he pointed out. Let the storm consume my unpaired life force. She gave him that alien head tilt again. Leaving you would have drawn attention more swiftly. A strong, resonant signature suddenly extinguished. Suspicious. Linking disguises the source, alters the signature, makes it utier. Ours. A single, complicated pattern. More difficult to track. So, he was a decoy. A very, very intimately connected decoy. He swallowed hard. Right. Teamwork. Bonding through mutually assured destruction. She didn't smile. He didn't expect her to. But the corners of her hard mouth softened minutely. Something akin to it. Now, we wait for the eye to pass. And we hope the guardians do not scan too deeply. The eye. The guardians. Forbidden bonds and glowing patterns. He was so far out of his depth, he couldn't even see the surface anymore. But he could feel her presence, strong and strange, and the persistent hum of the resonance between them. He was bound to her now by storm and by some terrifying, forbidden energy. And for the first time since he'd crashed, he felt a sliver of something other than fear, a grudging sense of partnership. The storm's eye, a terrifying calm in the center of the maelstrom, eventually passed over the wrecked ship. The shrieking wind died down, replaced by an eerie silence, punctuated only by the dripping water and the low, persistent hum of their shared resonance. Kale could still feel the connection to Vorlog, a subtle pressure behind his eyes, a faint echo of her emotions, caution, readiness, and a deep, cold anger simmering beneath the surface. They cautiously moved through the twisted metal of the forward section, searching for anything salvageable. There wasn't much. The power core was slagged, the comms array was a mess of fried wires, and the life support was running on fumes. Survival wasn't going to happen here. They had to move. So, the Guardians, Kale said, breaking the tense silence. What exactly are they, and what happens if they find us? Vorlog stopped, her sharp gaze sweeping over the desolate landscape visible through a jagged tear in the hull, jagged, dark spires of mineral formations glowing faintly under the strange dim light filtering through the residual storm clouds. Guardians are enforcers of the purity vow, trained to sense and nullify forbidden resonance, to cleanse the bloodlines of the contamination. She said, contamination, like it was the worst word in the universe. Contamination being me? Kale finished, feeling a prickle of defensiveness. Any non-Vortha, Vorlag confirmed, who forms a deep resonance link. It is seen as a corruption of the Vortha pattern's soul, punishable by severance. For both parties, severance. He didn't like the sound of that, and what does severance involve? Nullification of the resonance, she said flatly. For the Vortha, it is a ritual scarring, a public shaming, often followed by re-exile to a more desolate zone. For the contamination, elimination is the preferred method. Elimination, as in death. Okay, stakes raised. He glanced at the exile mark on her throat, the crimson glow pulsing faintly. So, your scar. That was a failed attempt to sever a previous link? No, she said, her voice tight. That was for an accidental violation. A momentary loss of control during a purity trial. My resonance flared, unshielded, near a prisoner. A prisoner? That sounded bad. What kind of prisoner? Irrelevant, she snapped, her posture stiffening. The brief glimpse of vulnerability vanished, replaced by the hard, unyielding enforcer. What is relevant is that the mark weakened my natural shield, made me vulnerable to this world's storm resonance, made me need your amplification. So, he wasn't just a decoy, he was a necessary battery. Charming, right? Glad I could help facilitate your violation and impending death. He couldn't help the sarcasm. It was hardwired. We must move, Vorlag commanded, ignoring his remark. The eye will not last. We need to find a place to shelter from the next wave. Somewhere the storm resonance is less intense, or where my patterns can re-anchor. She looked at the rocky spires outside. There is a formation of dolls, a labyrinth of mineral caves. The magnetics shift within them. May provide line spots, caves, trapped underground, with a dangerous, exiled alien who considered him contamination and a necessary violation. What could go wrong? Lead the way, Captain Glowy Eyes, he sighed. He retrieved a still functional data pad that had somehow survived, tucking it into his belt. Maybe there were schematics of this moon, or something about the Vortha. They climbed out of the wreck into the strange, charged silence of the eye. The ground beneath their feet was hard, crystalline, shimmering with trapped light. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and minerals. As they moved towards the spires, Kale felt the resonance between them strengthen again. No longer just a hum, but a distinct pull, drawing him towards her. His body felt strange, buzzing with a low energy. He risked a glance at his own skin. No glowing patterns, thank God. But a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer seemed to follow him. And then he saw it. Not far off, silhouetted against the retreating storm clouds. Figures, tall, angular, armored like Vorlag, their patterns glowing with cold, uniform light. Guardians. They had been scanned, and they were being hunted. Vorlag, he hissed, grabbing her arm. We got company. Uniforms. Glowing, her head snapped up, her eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying to a fierce white. A low growl, colder and more predatory than before, rumbled in her chest. Guardians, she confirmed, her voice a lethal whisper. They are already too close. Move, human. Move now. She grabbed his arm in return, her grip crushing, and pulled him forward, breaking into a dead run towards the mineral spires, towards the labyrinthine caves that might offer salvation, or might just be a more convenient place to die. Their shared resonance flared, a beacon in the temporary calm, drawing the hunters closer. The hunt had begun. They ran, the ground hard and uneven underfoot, the air thin and cold in the temporary calm. Vorlag was incredibly fast, her scaled limbs moving with effortless power. Kale, despite his years of running, struggled to keep up, his lungs burning, the unfamiliar energy of the resonance amplifying his exhaustion. He risked a look back. The guardians were gaining. Their glowing patterns seemed to burn brighter with every stride, cold blue fire against the dim landscape. They were hunting, and Kale could feel the target painted on his back, and on Vorlog's. "They're fast," he gasped, stumbling slightly. Vorlog didn't slow. "Guardians are honed. Focused. We need the labyrinth." She pulled him harder, her grip bruising, but he didn't complain. He needed her strength, her knowledge of this hellish world. The mineral spires loomed ahead, sharp, dark teeth against the bruised sky. The air around them seemed to warp, shimmer with magnetic energy. "Is this a trap?" he asked, his voice ragged. "These caves, are they safe?" "They are unpredictable," Vorlog replied, her voice strained. "The magnetic shift. They interfere with resonance, may shield us, may disorient us, may amplify in unexpected ways. Unexpected ways. Unexpected ways." That sounded ominous, especially combined with their already unstable link. They reached the spires, diving into a narrow fissure that opened into a cavernous space. The air here was warmer, thicker, filled with the scent of damp earth and minerals. The glow of their resonance seemed to dim as they entered. The humming in Kale's chest receding slightly. Behind them, he heard the metallic echo of the guardians entering the labyrinth. They were committed now. Vorlog pressed him back against the cave wall, her body a hard barrier against his. "They will sense our path if the resonance lingers," she whispered, her face inches from his. Her eyes, dim now, scanned the cave around them. "We must disrupt it, or hide it." Disrupting the link that was apparently keeping them alive in the storm seemed counterproductive. "Hiding it? How do we hide it?" he asked, trying to regulate his breathing. She looked at him, her gaze intense. Her hand reached up, tracing the outline of his jaw, his ear, the back of his neck. Her touch sent shivers down his spine. Not entirely from fear this time. "Intense focus," she murmured. "A redirection, overwhelming the primary resonance with something else." Something else? What else was there? His mind raced. The storm, the threat, the terrifying intimacy. "Like, focusing on you?" he asked, the words coming out before he could stop them. It felt both ridiculous and terrifyingly right. Her eyes widened slightly in the dim light. The faint glow in them flickered. "You understand resonance," she breathed, almost surprised. "Yes. On me. On the contact. Until the patterns." The calm. Her other hand rested on his chest again, over his heart. He could feel the faint, familiar vibration return, stronger this time, focused entirely on their point of contact. He felt a strange pressure build in his chest, radiating outwards, pushing back against the retreating hum of their shared resonance with the storm. It was like building a new resonance, a smaller, more intense one, centered on the physical space between their bodies. He focused on her, on the hard line of her jaw under his touch, on the intricate patterns of her scales, on the scent of copper and nightshade that clung to her. He focused on the warmth radiating from her, on the powerful presence of her body pressed against his. His heart hammered against his ribs. He could feel the blood rushing in his ears. The sound of the pursuing guardians faded into the background, drowned out by the pounding in his own head and the subtle, growing hum between him and Vorlog. Her eyes locked onto his, intense, searching. She leaned in, slowly, deliberately. Her head tilted, and he felt the faint brush of her hard cheek against his. It wasn't just hiding the resonance. It felt like transforming it from a broad, defensive shield against the storm into something sharp, focused, and intensely personal. The air crackled with anticipation. The air in the cave was suddenly thick with anticipation. The silence broken only by their ragged breaths and the distant echoes of the guardians' footsteps. Vorlog leaned closer, her head tilting, her glowing eyes fixed on his. Kale felt the new resonance building between them, focused and intense, pushing out the lingering storm bond. His hand was still on her jaw, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. Her scales were cool against his skin, but the flesh beneath radiated heat, intense focus, she repeated, her voice a low, rough whisper. On the contact. On me. Let the old resonance fade into this. She didn't explain what this was, but Kale felt it building, a powerful energy centered in his chest, radiating towards her. It wasn't fear driving it now. It was something else, something potent and raw. It felt like claiming, like being claimed. Her gaze dropped to his mouth. He saw a flicker of something he recognized, despite the alien eyes, desire, stark and undeniable. His own body responded instantly, a surge of heat, a tightening in his gut. He wanted this. More than just escape, more than just survival. He wanted this alien woman who had trapped him, threatened him, and now leaned into his touch with a desperate intensity. He shifted his hand, cupping the back of her head, his fingers tangling slightly in whatever passed for her hair. Fine, filament-like growths that felt cool and smooth. He pulled her closer. Her mouth, hard and unyielding, met his. It wasn't soft like a human kiss. It was demanding, a pressing of hard surfaces, a seeking entry with silent, powerful intent. He opened his mouth slightly, his tongue meeting something smooth and firm, tasting of minerals and her unique scent. Her hand moved from his chest, sliding around his neck, her claws sharp but not piercing his skin, anchoring him, pulling him deeper into the kiss. The resonance between them surged, pulsing outwards, not as a shield against the storm now, but as something wild and untamed. His mind reeled, bombarded with a rush of sensation, the unexpected softness just inside her mouth, the sharp, sweet taste, the intoxicating scent, the fierce pressure of her body against his, and beneath it all, the deep, steady thrumming of her throat nodes, vibrating against his own. He felt his own consciousness shifting, a blurring of edges, a merging of senses. He felt a jolt, a tearing sensation, like a veil being ripped away. He was seeing through her eyes, tasting with her tongue, feeling the world with her strange, heightened senses. He saw his own face, blurred by proximity, reflecting the raw intensity in her glowing eyes. He felt his soft skin against her scales, the vulnerability of his human body starkly contrasted with her armored strength. He felt the ache deep in her core, a need ancient and profound, amplified by the resonance they were forging. It wasn't just physical. It was a melding of essence, a merging of patterns, and it was terrifying. He heard the metallic scrape of boots getting closer outside the cave entrance. The guardians. They were running out of time. Vorlag broke the kiss, her breathing as ragged as his. Her eyes were blazing, the glow so intense it seemed to consume the dim light of the cave. The resonance. Charles is changed, she gasped, her voice thick with emotion, her grip on his neck tight. It focuses now on the intimate patterns. Her hand slid down his chest, lower, her touch sending jolts of fire through him. The guardians will not sense the storm bond. They will sense that this. Her hand found him, stroking with a possessive curiosity that stole his breath. A claiming resonance, forged under duress. Unexpected, potent. A claiming resonance. She wasn't just hiding the storm bond. She was overriding it with something else entirely. Something that was apparently a Vortha ritual for ownership. Claiming? He choked out, his body responding to her touch with a desperate urgency. You're claiming me? Now? Yes, she said, her voice dropping to a husky growl. Her fingers tightened their grip. Before they find us, before they sever us, I will claim you. The resonance demands it. Survival demands it. Her eyes searched his, a flicker of something vulnerable in their fierce glow. And thought of my patterns ache for it, deeply. His mind was a chaotic mess of fear, arousal, and disbelief. Claimed by a glow-in-the-dark alien warrior? In a cave, while her people hunted them. It was insane. It was terrifying. And his body, vibrating with the intense resonance they had just created, was screaming yes. The air in the cave thickened further, crackling with the potent, focused resonance they had created. Vorlag's grip on Kale tightened, her hand exploring him with an intensity that stole his breath. His body was on fire, aching for her touch, the strange, new resonance amplifying every sensation. He felt utterly exposed, vulnerable, yet powerfully drawn to her. Claiming, she repeated, the word a low growl against his ear. A ritual of ownership, of union. It links patterns irrevocably, physically, spiritually. She pulled him against her, her hard body pressing into his softness, mirroring the pressure her hand exerted. The guardians seek to sever errant resonance, but a claiming resonance is different, fundamental, even forbidden. It is difficult to break without destroying the bonded parties entirely. So, if they completed this claiming, the guardians might not be able to just nullify the bond. They might have to kill them both. The stakes were impossibly high, but looking into Vorlag's blazing eyes, feeling the raw power radiating from her, the desperate intensity of her touch, logic and fear seemed to melt away. All that mattered was the overwhelming pull between them, amplified by the danger, by the closeness, by the alien energy flooding his senses. Is this the only way? He whispered, his voice hoarse. To survive? It is the strongest way, she confirmed, her voice rough. To create a pattern they cannot easily unravel. To make us one pattern, shielded by ritual. One pattern. He could feel it already, the blurring of his own sense of self with hers, the echo of her thoughts and emotions flowing through the resonance. Her hand moved lower still, finding the heat, the pulsing need she had ignited within him. He gasped, his head falling back against the cold cave wall. And how does a claiming happen? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Her eyes burned into his, filled with a predatory hunger that was somehow mixed with a profound, aching need. Through contact, she said, her voice dropping to a guttural purr. Intimate contact. A complete merging of patterns. Through the Tolman physical act, accelerated by resonance. She didn't wait for his answer. She pressed her body closer, her scaled legs parting slightly, guiding his body against hers. He felt the hard, unfamiliar texture of her inner thighs, the unexpected softness beneath the scales there. His hand, still tangled in her filament hair, tightened, pulling her mouth down to his again. This kiss was different from the first. It was deeper, wetter, infused with a raw, desperate passion. Her tongue met his, exploratory, demanding, tasting him with a strange, focused intensity that sent jolts of pleasure through his entire body. He responded instinctively, his own tongue tracing the smooth, firm ridges inside her mouth. Her other hand, which had been holding him, moved, finding the closure of his flight suit. With surprising speed and efficiency, she began to open it, exposing his skin to the cool cave air, then to the heat of her own body. He felt the rough brush of her scales against his bare chest, the shocking contrast of textures. He reached for her, fumbling with the closures of her own strange, scaled garment. Or maybe it was just her skin. She growled low in her chest, a sound of impatience, and with a swift, fluid movement, she tore open the front of her armor, revealing the glowing, patterned skin beneath. It wasn't just scales. It was like intricate mosaic, swirling lines of faint bioluminescence tracing over smoother, more yielding flesh. Her breasts were high and firm, tipped with dark, crystalline points that pulsed with a soft light. The sight of her, exposed and glowing in the dim cave, took his breath away. She pulled his suit down roughly, pushing him back against the wall, her body following, pressing him into the stone. The contact was electric, her heat soaking into him, the hum of their resonance intensifying to a roar in his ears. He felt the slickness on her inner thighs, a clear indication of her readiness, of the biological imperative driving this claiming. She positioned herself, her glowing eyes never leaving his, a silent question and a fierce demand. Now, Kale, she commanded, her voice raw with need. Focus the resonance into the union. Claim me. Be claimed. His world narrowed to her, to the feel of her hard body pressing into his, the heat radiating from her, the intoxicating scent, the silent promise of surrender and possession in her eyes. The sounds of the guardians faded entirely. There was only the resonance, the ache, and the burning need to become one pattern, one shield against the storm and the hunters it had drawn. With a rough, powerful movement, she took him, a cry torn from her throat, not of pain, but of fierce, primal satisfaction. The resonance surged, blinding him for a moment with pure, white light. He felt a jolt deep in his core, a sense of being anchored, bound, irrevocably linked. This wasn't just sex. This was transformation. This was claiming. The climax of their forced resonant union sent a shockwave through Kale's body, a wave of pure white energy that seemed to fill the cave and then contract violently, pulling him deep into Vorlag's consciousness. For a few terrifying seconds he wasn't Kale the smuggler, the survivor. He was Vorlag the enforcer, the exile seeing the world through her alien eyes, feeling the weight of her broken vow, the sting of her exile mark, the profound ancient satisfaction of the completed claiming ritual. He saw glimpses of her past, cold, sterile training grounds, brutal dominance trials, the terrifying void of the exile gate opening before her. He felt the emptiness that had driven her, the desperate need for connection, for validation that had led her to amplify his strange human resonance. And then, as abruptly as it began, the intense psychic link snapped. He was back in his own body, trembling, breathless, anchored against a cold cave wall by Vorlag's still trembling form. Her body was slick with a strange, faintly glowing fluid. The patterned skin on her chest pulsed with a fierce, crimson light, mirroring the glow of her exile mark. Her eyes, no longer just glowing, seemed to contain miniature swirling galaxies. She let out a long, shuddering sigh, her head falling against his shoulder. "It is done," she whispered, her voice raspy, filled with a complex mix of relief, regret, and something that sounded strangely like sorrow. "The patterns are bound. We are," claimed. He could still feel the resonance, the intense connection between them, now a constant, low thrum, deep in his core. It felt different than before, not just energy transfer, but an intrinsic link, like they shared a single nervous system. "Claimed," he repeated, the word tasting foreign on his tongue. He looked down at their joined bodies, tangled together, slick with the residue of their mating. He felt utterly changed, violated and whole, terrified and strangely, deeply content. What happens now?" "Now," Vorlag said, pushing herself up slightly, her body still connected to his. "We face the consequences. The Guardians will sense this. The claiming signature is unmistakable to those trained to perceive patterns." She shifted, disengaging from him slowly, reluctantly. As she pulled away, Kale saw it. On his chest, directly over his heart, his skin was beginning to glow with the same faint, patterned luminescence as her body. Not just a shimmer, these were lines, faint at first, mirroring the swirling designs on her. A mark. Her mark. Claiming him had physically marked him. He touched the spot, his fingers tracing the strange glowing lines. It didn't hurt, but it felt alien, wrong, and terrifyingly permanent. You marked me," he said, his voice flat. Vorlag looked at the mark, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "The claiming requires a reciprocal pattern transfer," she stated, as if explaining a scientific principle, "especially with resonant divergence. Your pattern receives the anchoring sigil. It signifies the bond, the ownership. There it was. Not partnership, not equality. Ownership. The word hit him like a physical blow. "Ownership?" he scoffed, the old sarcasm returning, sharp and bitter, a defense against the emotional chaos swirling inside him. "I thought this was survival. You claimed me like property?" Vorlag flinched, recoiling slightly as if he had struck her. Her patterns dimmed fractionally. "Property?" she repeated, her voice tight. "No. Claiming is responsibility. Union. The owner protects the claimed. the claim, provides anchor and loyalty, responsibility, loyalty, protection. It was a different framework, alien and confusing, but still deeply rooted in power dynamics. Right, Kale said, pushing himself away from the wall, ignoring the ache in his muscles, the residual heat, the burning shame that warred with the strange, resonant connection. Well, thanks for the protective custody, I guess. Now what? Do I get a collar? A name tag? He scrambled to pull up his flight suit, needing to cover the glowing mark, needing to hide from her gaze, from the terrifying reality of what they had done. He felt the vulnerability of his soft human skin against her hard, scaled body, the stark contrast of their natures emphasized by the physical intimacy they had just shared. He was marked, claimed, by an exiled alien warrior running from her own people, and the consequences were just beginning. The sound of the Guardians was closer now, their movements echoing through the labyrinthine caves. They had sensed the claiming, and they were coming. The sound of the Guardians echoed louder in the labyrinth, drawing closer. Kale fumbled with his flight suit, desperate to cover the glowing mark on his chest, feeling exposed and raw. Vorlag watched him, her expression unreadable, the glow of her patterns dimming slightly, as if mirroring the retreat of the intense resonance from moments before. They are close, she stated, her voice flat. The claiming pattern. What is a beacon in this environment? Different from the storm bond, but just as potent. She moved with swift, practiced efficiency, pulling up the torn edges of her own armor, covering the glowing patterned skin beneath. The act felt strangely like a return to normalcy, a rejection of the raw intimacy they had just shared. So, what's the plan, owner? Kale asked, his voice still laced with bitter sarcasm. Lead your newly acquired property to safety? Or sacrifice me as a diversion? Vorlag's head snapped up, her eyes, still faintly glowing, fixed on him. A low growl rumbled in her chest. Do not mock the claiming, Kale. It is sacred. Sacred? He scoffed. You forced it on me to survive. You marked me without asking. And now you say it's sacred? Spare me the alien rituals. His anger, fueled by fear and a violation of his autonomy, flared. He felt the resonance between them spike, a mirror of his emotional turmoil. Vorlag seemed to sense it, her patterns pulsing brighter. It was necessary, she retorted, her voice rising, edged with pain. The claiming was the strongest shield. My pattern soul recognized yours. A necessary anchor. Do you think I desired? Is this a forced bond with a divergent? An act that further damns my exile? Her words hit him hard. She hadn't wanted this either. She was as trapped by the circumstances, by her need for survival, by her alien biology and culture, as he was. Your exile? He pressed, trying to understand the depth of her situation. You said you were exiled for a broken vow, a failed claiming during a purity trial. What does any of that even mean? She hesitated, looking away towards the entrance of the cave system. The sounds of the Guardians were deafening now. They were right outside. Later, she hissed, her attention snapping back to the immediate threat. We fight together. The bond makes us stronger, faster, more resilient. She grabbed his arm again, pulling him deeper into the labyrinth. Stay close. Let the resonance guide you. He didn't have time to argue, to process the whirlwind of emotions, the anger, the confusion, the terrifying permanence of the glowing mark on his chest. The Guardians were here. They burst into the cavern, sleek, angular figures, their own patterns glowing with cold, implacable light, their weapons, slender energy lances, hummed with power. Vorlag, exiled, one of them boomed, the voice echoing through the caves. You carry a forbidden resonance. You have contaminated your patterned soul with a divergent. Surrender the abomination. Abomination. Kale felt a cold wave of fury wash over him. He wasn't an abomination. He was a human survivor. Vorlag stepped forward, positioning herself slightly in front of him. A shield. Her scaled body tensed, radiating lethal intent. Her patterns blazed with fierce, defiant crimson. the glow of her exile mark consuming the fainter luminescence of her claiming sigils. I carry the resonance of survival, Guardian Torak, she roared back, her voice echoing the challenge. This divergent is claimed. He is Vortha bonded now. His pattern is linked to mine. Severing him is severing me. The Guardians hesitated for a fraction of a second. Killing an unbonded divergent might be easy. Killing a divergent who had been claimed, whose pattern was irrevocably linked to a Vortha, even an exiled one, that was a different matter. It violated their own purity codes, risked contaminating their patterns with the backlash of a violently broken bond. That moment of hesitation was all Vorlag needed. Now Kale, she yelled, launching herself forward, a blur of scaled fury. Amplify. Vorlag moved like lightning, a whirlwind of claws and scales. Kale didn't understand how he was supposed to amplify anything mid-combat, but the resonance between them flared in response to the immediate danger in her command. He felt a surge of energy, sharpening his senses, making his movements feel faster, more precise. The glowing mark on his chest pulsed, synchronizing with the blazing crimson of Vorlag's patterns. He saw the Guardians react, their energy lances spitting crackling fire. Vorlag deflected the first blast with a forearm, the scaled armor sparking but holding. She closed the distance on one, engaging him in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The other Guardians shifted their attention to Kale. He wasn't a warrior, just a smuggler who knew how to handle a pistol and run like hell. His plasma pistol was useless. He dodged a lance blast, the heat searing his skin even through his suit. He scrambled behind a mineral formation, his heart hammering. Vorlag, he yelled. I'm not built for this. Stay near, she roared back, locked in a brutal struggle with the Guardian, their bodies slamming against the cave walls. Your presence anchors my speed. Draw their fire, survive. Draw their fire. Great. He was still a decoy, a bonded, marked decoy. He peeked out from behind the rock. The Guardians were trying to encircle them, forcing them into the open. He saw an opening, a narrow passage between two spires. It looked unstable, maybe dangerous enough to deter the Guardians, or at least slow them down. Vorlag, the unstable passage. Can we make it? He yelled. She disengaged from her opponent with a savage blow, knocking the Guardian back against the wall. Her gaze flicked to where he pointed. Risky, she yelled back. The magnetics are volatile. It could collapse. Better than getting pincushioned. He didn't wait for her answer. He sprinted towards the passage, relying on the amplified senses the resonance provided. He felt Vorlag close behind him, a whirlwind of motion and power. He plunged into the narrow, twisting passage. The air here was thick with magnetic energy, making the glowing mark on his chest thrum violently. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint light. Behind them, he heard the Guardians entering the passage. Hold them, Vorlag yelled, shoving him past a crumbling section. She turned, facing the Guardians, her body filling the narrow space, a defiant scaled barrier. The claiming will not be broken. Not by you, she met the first Guardian head-on, a furious tangle of limbs and energy lances. The resonance between Cal and Vorlag intensified further, a feedback loop of adrenaline and mutual desperation. He could feel her fighting, feel the impact of blows, the strain on her body, channeled through the link. It was agonizing and exhilarating. He felt a surge of protective fury, not just for himself, but for her. She was fighting for both of them, against her own people, for a bond she hadn't even wanted. He turned, looking back, needing to do something. He saw Vorlag locked in combat, holding the narrow passage against two Guardians. The walls around them were groaning, shimmering with unstable energy. He needed to create a distraction, something to make the Guardians pull back. He scrambled up a small incline, his eyes scanning the unstable rock formations. The datapad. He pulled it out, frantically trying to access local schematics, hoping to find a weak point, a way to trigger a controlled collapse. He needed something to buy Vorlag time. He found a structural reading, a concentration of volatile minerals further down the passage, destabilized by the magnetic energy. If he could overload it, He had a multi-tool on his belt, meant for ship repairs. Maybe he could jury-rig something, direct the resonance energies somehow. It was a long shot, but looking at Vorlag still fighting fiercely, holding the line alone, he knew he had to try. He focused, not just on the resonance connecting them, but on the magnetic energies swirling in the passage, on the volatile minerals ahead. He held up the datapad, using the multi-tool to create a localized energy spike, trying to channel the ambient energy, the storm's leftover power, their amplified resonance, into that one point. It felt like pushing against a solid wall, but the link to Vorlag provided the leverage, the anchor. His mark blazed on his chest, a scorching heat spreading through him. He felt her awareness snap to him, sensing his intent through the bond. "Kale, what are you doing?" she roared, her voice echoing through the passage. "Hold on," he yelled back, pouring everything he had into the makeshift device, into the resonance, creating a diversion. The air crackled. The walls around the volatile point began to glow brightly, then fracture. The ground trembled. Vorlag broke away from the Guardians, sprinting towards him as the passage began to collapse. The passage groaned and shrieked as the unstable minerals collapsed, triggered by Kale's desperate jury-rigged energy spike. Rocks the size of speeders tumbled from the ceiling, sealing the path behind them with a thunderous roar. Dust and debris filled the air. Vorlag reached him just as the main section gave way, tackling him to the ground, shielding him with her body as chunks of rock rained down. The resonance between them flared violently with the shock of the collapse, blinding Kale for a moment. When the dust settled, they were in a small, relatively stable pocket, completely sealed off from the passage behind them. Silence descended, broken only by their ragged breathing and the settling debris. Kale pushed himself up, coughing. Vorlag was kneeling beside him, seemingly unharmed, though her scaled body was coated in dust and rock fragments. Her patterns were still blazing crimson, but the light was starting to fade. "Did it work?" he rasped, looking back at the wall of rubble that now separated them from the Guardians. Vorlag tilted her head, listening. "I sense confusion," she said softly, her voice rough, "and frustration. They will try to clear it, but it will take time. We are temporarily safe." Temporarily. He was getting tired of that word. He looked at her, really looked at her, in the dim light filtering through cracks in the rubble. She was magnificent, even covered in dust and exhaustion. Dangerous, alien, and utterly compelling. The mark on his chest was still glowing, a faint pulse against his skin, a constant reminder of the claiming, of the bond. You fought for me," he said, the words feeling inadequate. She met his gaze, her eyes softening slightly. "You are claiming my responsibility." Responsibility. He still didn't like the word, but hearing her say it now felt different, weighted with the reality of their shared danger, their shared survival. "And you fought for yourself," he added. "Against your own people." She looked away, her gaze distant. "They are not my people. Not anymore. Not after my exile. Not after this." She touched the mark on his throat, the angry crimson glow. "My broken vow was unforgivable. The purity trial. It demanded absolute control, absolute suppression of all extraneous resonance, all emotion." She sighed, a sound of deep weariness. A prisoner was brought before the tribunal. A telepath, strong, unshielded. His fear, Dex, his pain, dash. It breached my defenses. My own latent empathy resonance flared, uncontrolled. A violation of the vow. Latent empathy? An enforcer? Empathy? Kale said, surprised. "I didn't think. I mean, you seem pretty hard." "It is a weakness," she said flatly, "suppressed since hatching. Enforcers must be pure channelers of force, not feelers of others' pain." She paused, looking at him again, a strange mixture of emotions swirling in her eyes. You felt it too, during the claiming resonance. My past. My cake?" He nodded. He had. He had felt her loneliness, her anger, her desperate need to belong. to be anchored. Yeah, I felt it. It wasn't just you. He hesitated, then spoke about the guilt that had driven him, the loss that haunted his own past, the failed mission, the crew he couldn't save. He hadn't spoken of it in years, but with Vorlog, with the strange, intense connection between them, the words spilled out, raw and painful. He saw understanding dawn in her alien eyes. The resonance between them pulsed, not with the urgency of survival or the fire of claiming, but with something quieter, deeper, shared pain, shared isolation. We are both exiles, she said softly, reaching out to touch the glowing mark on his chest. Marked by failure, by loss. Yeah, he agreed, his voice rough. Looks like it. He covered her hand with his, holding it against his skin. Her scales felt warm now, comforting. What happens now? He asked again, the question hanging heavy in the air. The Guardians were temporarily blocked, but they wouldn't stay blocked forever. They were stranded, on a dangerous moon, hunted by Vorlag's people, irrevocably bound by a ritual neither of them had fully chosen. Vorlag looked at him, her gaze steady. We face it, she said, stating it as a simple fact. Together, the claiming has bound our patterns, our fates. My exile is now shared. Your path is mine. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. He felt the soft hum of her throat nodes against his skin, a low, steady vibration that resonated deep within him, matching the pulse of the mark on his chest. It wasn't just a survival mechanism anymore. It felt like home. Dangerous, terrifying, alien home. But home. They rested in the temporary safety of the collapsed passage, the silence broken only by their breaths and the subtle thrum of their shared resonance. Kale traced the glowing mark on his chest, the patterns surprisingly intricate. It was alien, yes, but it was also part of him now. He felt the echo of Vorlag within, a constant, low hum of her presence, her emotions. He could sense her readiness, her vigilance, and a strange undercurrent of the contemplation. The Guardians will bring heavier nullification tools, Vorlag said, breaking the silence. They will try to break through the rubble, to break the claiming. Kyle looked at her. Can they? Violently, she replied, with risk to themselves and absolute certainty of dispersal for us. A broken claiming at this level of resonance would scatter our pattern souls. Non-existence, non-existence. Okay, so fighting back wasn't just about escaping. It was about ensuring their very existence. So running isn't an option anymore, he asked. Not effectively, not long-term. My exile path led to desolate zones. Your presence makes them too visible now. And the Guardians will hunt relentlessly to purge the contamination. Contamination. He still hated that word, but he understood the Vortha perspective better now. A rigid hierarchy, absolute control, purity of pattern above all else. In Vorlag, with her suppressed empathy and accidental resonance, was a living violation. And now, so was he. What about your culture? Kale asked. Is there any way to legitimize this claiming? Vorlag was silent for a long moment. The glow of her patterns intensified slightly. There is one path, she said slowly, her voice low. A path of profound challenge. A claiming forged in the face of the tribunal. A ritual of integration. A ritual of integration. It sounded intense. What does that involve? Presenting the claim before the tribunal. Proving the bond's strength. The divergence. Worthiness. It requires passing trials. Surviving judgments. And if successful, it theoretically integrates the divergence pattern into the Vortha collective, however low the station. It is rarely attempted. Never with a divergent of your extreme difference. He was an extreme difference. No kidding. So, a suicide mission dressed up as a shot at acceptance? Kale summarized dryly. More likely, yes, Vorlag confirmed, her voice flat. But it is the only path that does not end in dispersal. Or perpetual desperate flight. Perpetual, desperate flight was his usual mode of operation. but perpetual flight, with a constantly glowing mark on his chest, and a Vortha enforcer broadcasting their location through a shared resonance. That sounded even worse. And if we fail? He asked. Dispersal, she said simply. Or, if the tribunal is merciful, imprisonment. Separate until dispersal occurs naturally. Imprisonment. Separate. The thought of being separated from her, of the resonance link being cut, sent a strange pang through him. He looked at the glowing mark on his chest. It was more than just a symbol of ownership now. It was a connection, a link to this powerful, complex, infuriating alien woman. Okay, Carol said, making a decision that felt both insane and inevitable. Ritual of integration. Tribal tribunal. Let's do it. Vorlag's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering in their depths. You would risk it? Face the tribunal? What choice do we have? Kale shrugged, though his heart was hammering against his ribs. Perpetual flight sounds exhausting. And frankly, I'm curious about your tribe. He managed a weak, sarcastic grin. Someone has to teach them that contamination is just a matter of perspective. Vorlag stared at him for another long moment. Then a sound rumbled in her chest. Not a growl this time, but something softer, almost like a low laugh. Stubbornness, she murmured, touching the glowing mark on his chest again. A useful trait. Perhaps. Required. She leaned her forehead against his again, the resonance between them settling into a quiet, steady rhythm. They were claimed, exiled, hunted, and now, inexplicably, heading towards the heart of the Vortha world to face a tribunal, for a chance at a future they had accidentally created in the eye of a storm. It was the most insane thing he'd ever done, which for Kale was saying something. But with Vorlag by his side, linked to him by an undeniable bond, it also felt like the most right. The Guardians were digging. The storm was passing. Their future, however uncertain, began now.